Okay, welcome to User Interaction 2. Let's talk about how we can use the mouse, much like User Interaction 1 was about keyboards and how to detect them, what's going on with the keyboard. Now we can interact with the user using a mouse as well. So if we're in Python, then in Code Sculptor, I might start with a pretty basic Code Sculptor outline, which you could take a quick look at if you wanted to pause the video and create what I have. Even though I created a height and width up here, I didn't actually use it. I'm going to start with just a very small little window. And when I run this, nothing really happens because I've told the draw command to just be empty. So first of all, we have to figure out how we can create a mouse handler. So down here we have setting a draw handler. We're going to do the same thing to set a mouse handler. Now there's actually two different types of mouse handlers. The first one is to handle clicking. So it treats a click differently than a drag. So we're going to talk about mouse drag handlers in a little bit, but let's start with this one. I usually name my mouse click handler click because I find that to be an easy one to create. So up here, just like we have a draw handler function, now we're going to create our click handler. The draw handler has the canvas as what it needs, and if you remember the keyboard handler, it had a key as what it needs to function. The mouse has, or the click has a mouse position, so the click handler has built into it a variable to handle the position of the mouse. I usually call it pause. It might make more sense to call it mouse, M pause if we're going to be really good. We might call it mouse position because that's what it is. So you can name it any of those things. I'm going to just shorten it a little bit and call it mpause for now. Now, just to show you how this works, let me just say, okay, if we click, what do we want to do? That's what we'll go here. Like anything that you want to have happen when you click the mouse, you could have happen when you click the mouse. So if I click the mouse, I want to print the position. So now when I click the mouse, this is a 100 by 100, so I try to click somewhere in the middle, and I'm getting pretty close, the X and Y values of where I'm clicking. The corners are there, and so that's what it's doing, right? It's just saying, oh, when you click the mouse, you want to do what? You want to print the position. Okay, sounds good. You could have the mouse click do anything you want. When I click the mouse, then all sorts of things could happen. So those are the kinds of things that are going to happen that we can create. For instance, how do I go ahead and use this? So, sorry. As soon as I start recording, I start yawning. I don't know why. So let's just go down here and say, okay, we're going to draw a circle if we, on the draw. So we draw a circle, and where are we going to draw this circle? Well, we're going to draw the circle at mpause, and I'm going to come back up here and explain one thing that's going on with mpause in a second. But first of all, now the radius of my circle, this is a pretty small thing, so I'll just do 10, and we'll make it a typical red circle. So is that going to work? Here, I have a mouse position, and so here I say, well, draw my circle at the mouse position. Notice I don't have an X and a Y, which is what I'm going to explain in just a second. But first, unfortunately, that doesn't work because the mouse position here is a local variable just for this one. And down here, it doesn't know what mouse position is anymore. So let's just see what happens if I say, well, okay, let's use the global mouse position. Now that's where we get into some dangerous stuff. Because here, it needs to know mouse position, so you can't really then try to make another one called global, because this is built in, it has to be a local. So you can't do that. So it would be better to make something here. Maybe we'll call it chords for coordinates, right? So I have a global coordinates. So up here, well, my coordinates are going to equal 0, comma 0. Let's continue playing with this idea of having our x and our y put together like this, because that's how the mouse is treated. So we'll print them, and then we'll say, okay, our chords equals the mouse position. So then I come down here, and instead of mouse position, I say draw my circle at that variable. So there it is, being drawn in the 0, 0 position. And as I click, yep, sure enough, there it is. So what's going on here with this idea that it's storing the x and the y into one variable, which is kind of handy if you think about it. Basically, if you've done lists, this is similar to a list. It's technically somewhat different. It's called a tuple. So let me just write this out. A tuple is a data type that can store multiple. Get it? It's kind of like multuple, because if you have a quintuple or a quadruple, that kind of thing, it's the same. That's where the root word is. So multiple data, but this is the part that's a little bit strange. But that data is immutable. That means not changeable. So what's that about? Well, you can't force the mouse to change. You can't set the position of the mouse here. This is, it reads the position of the mouse. You can't change the position of the mouse. So immutable means unchangeable. Now you might say, oh, but your coordinates changes. And that's because this is no longer going to technically be a tuple then. I think it's just going to be a list when I say that. Another way to think about it is, well, it doesn't really change. It just creates itself again at the same positions. So however you want to look at it. So one thing that we can do, I might as well keep that, but I could say print, maybe I'll do this, instead of printing mpos, I'll just print mpos at position 0. So what this is saying is to show me the first position of my mouse position. So now when I click, I'm just getting the first position, which is the x value. So over here should be a higher x value. Over here should be a lower x value. It doesn't matter how up and down I get because it's just showing me the x value. So that's position 0. And if I go to position 1, it's just going to show me the y value. So here's a high y value. Here's a low y value. So each of these positions can be referenced individually, but you can also talk about them together by just referring to the variable as a whole. So that's probably more than you needed to know about that, but I just want to explain kind of what's going on behind the scenes of our mouse position. So what else can you do with this mouse position? Well, as you can see, once you can click, you can do all sorts of things because now you can click at the position that you want to be at. And then it's up to you to kind of let your imagination go as to what kinds of things you can accomplish once you can detect that the person is clicking a mouse and they're clicking at a position on the screen, and you can do things with it. Later on in the assignments, we're actually going to create some, let me just run this again. We're going to create some buttons and other information that we can put on the side here. That's actually why there's a big white space over here, because we haven't used that yet. And so we'll be able to create buttons that you can click as well over here, and they can do things. So you'll see that in the assignments. I'm just going to show you real quick how to do that. And so that is not setting something, it's adding a button. And when you add a button, you give it some words. And then you put a comma and you make another handler or another function. And so you have to think, well, what's going to happen when I click the word words? Well, let's write a function called words. I don't know, I'm just making this up, right? So when I run this, well, it doesn't like that there's no definition of something. So let me just do that. It might help if I put parentheses in that. So now words is a button. What happens when I click it? Well, nothing. I just told it to pass. But now I have a button that I can click and I can do stuff. So that's kind of two ways to use the mouse. One is clicking on the canvas itself with the mouse click handler. Another one is creating buttons that can also do things when you click on them. And then you don't have to care about the position. It's just like, yes, this button has been clicked, so therefore go ahead and do something with that. So those are some options that you have for mouse clicks. In the next video, I'll just show you quickly the difference between a mouse click and a mouse drag, which won't take long. This is the longer part of the video right here.